Hey guys, welcome to TXP, and this video is going to be a little bit different from our normal reviews of products, and today we're looking at the evolution of video games throughout the years. So we're going to start off by going all the way back to 1972 and coming to present day and just seeing how the graphics and everything else has evolved. So this is going to be a fairly long video, but we hope you enjoy the journey with us, and we'll see you on the other side. Alright, the first game we have to look at on this list is 1972's Pong, and it's a really simple game. It's just a game of table tennis by hitting this ball, which is just a pixel back and forth. And I have to say that these type of games aren't really my either because, well, I came along just a little under 20 years after this. But we have to appreciate where these games came from, because this gives rise to the whole genre of video games. And this is one of the very first, if not the first, mass-produced video game. And it's a first generation game, so it's got single channel sound, it's got crude black and white graphics, but it's great to see where the games we have today and the games we love and play all stemmed from something so simple as this. I think when we go forward a couple of years, well not a couple of years, to 1978 now, to the likes of Space Invaders, even for people like me born in the 90s, it's a game we all know and it's so significant still, and we can see the technical improvements already, and we have colour graphics, we have multi-channel sounds, and the thing I love most about Space Invaders is not so much the concept of how the game is, which is fantastic anyway, it's just the way that the sound builds atmosphere, and it's one of those first games that actually uses sound to stimulate another sense of yours. So just listen to this for a second as it speeds up. As you take the aliens out, the game speeds up faster and faster, and the sound goes along with it. That last one was always so hard to hit as well. I remember they used to speed up and the last one just got crazy fast, which was almost impossible to hit. This is definitely one of the most iconic arcade games of all time, and it's one of those games that's going to survive forever, I think. If we go forward 1 year, we see Asteroids, and I've played this game a little bit. I've not played it that much really, but I do think it's very significant in the sense of the motion it portrays. We have to control a spaceship which accelerates and gains momentum, and we have to make sure we don't slam into oncoming asteroids. And it was just great the way when you hit an asteroid it broke apart, and it feels like this gave rise to the physics we have in today's games. And occasionally we have to dodge enemy fire from the occasional spaceship. And for them reasons, it came along at the same time as Space Invaders, and both of them from Atari and appeared on Atari 2600, but this is significant for different reasons, I think. But if we go forward 1 year later, I think this game is more significant, and this is Pacman, and the reason I say significant is because it totally changed the landscape of video games and introduced a new genre. Everything up to this point is like either space shooters or derivatives of Pong, and Pacman came along and it was totally different. So it was a game that your mum could enjoy, your sister could enjoy, and the staying power of Pacman's great. These games are still fantastic to play, even though they're well before my time. And Pacman had to take on 4 enemy ghosts which would try and haunt him throughout him eating these dots, and they were, what are they called? Blinky, Pinky, Inky and Clyde. And occasionally when you go on these power pellets, I think they called them, you could eat the ghosts and they would disappear. But yeah, it's one of the most successful games of all time actually as well. It's grossed over $2.5 billion in quarters by the 1990s, and that's just a staggering amount, especially when you take into account inflation. But how about 1984's Tetris? This actual release got here is the 1989 one for the Game Boy. I only chose this purely because of its soundtrack. Its theme tune's so iconic, and it's probably the second most iconic theme tune ever. The next game we show is the most iconic. This was developed by a Russian named Alexei Pajitnov. It was on Electronica 60, the Commodore 64, the IBM PC, and the Game Boy. But I think the next game is the most significant for theme tune, and I think you'll agree when it comes up in a second. Yeah, it can't be anything other than 1985 Super Mario Brothers, and
this is a game I think every kid from the 80s onwards has had some experience with Super Mario, because it's a franchise that's still going extremely strong today. I think almost every other Nintendo brand, every significant console Nintendo released have had some form of Mario on it, and his brother Luigi, and we have to rescue Princess Toadstool from the... what's the kingdom called? The Mushroom Kingdom, that's from the antagonist Bowser. And it's just... even though it's before my time, I've played this game, and I think everyone's gonna love Mario, or at least not appreciate Mario just for what it brought, and it's most probably one of the best side-scrolling games it's ever released. Mario, get your shit together, bro. This princess isn't with these extra lives. Does anyone know that song? No? Let's go forward one more year to... It's a different game. It's what's it called? How could I forget the name of this? It's Outrun, released in 1986, and it's perhaps the most 80s influenced game ever. Perhaps. There's one more on this list and maybe more 80s influenced. And it's not because of its graphics or its sound, it's just its theme. It was most probably released at the height of Miami Vice's popularity. So perhaps it's no coincidence that you see him driving a Ferrari Testarossa down a coast road, a bit like Sonny Crockett. But instead of Ricardo Tubbs next to you, you get a blonde female. And this game, not only for its graphical achievements, it's also significant for its non-linear gameplay. And you could take a left, you could take a right when the road split off. And it introduced a freedom of choice, and not just that, we also could choose the soundtrack as well. So it felt like you could actually go and take a ride. And one of the designers, some guy named Suzuki, well, just gonna drop my microphone then, described this not as a racing game, but as a driving game, and I think he got that spot on, really increasing that atmosphere for this game. So this game was released in the year I was born, 1991, so it's still slightly before my time, but I did buy a Mega Drive a few months ago just to play this game, because I do actually like Sonic, and honestly, although this is a generation ahead of Super Mario, I don't feel that it's gone that much more involved. It's not that much more technical achievements, I don't think. I mean, sure, its graphics are better, but I included this for a different reason, just purely because of the staying power and how iconic Sonic is. And Sonic was most probably responsible for that bit of rivalry in the 1990s between Sega and Nintendo, because Sonic was introduced to be Sega's answer to Super Mario, and to some extent they really succeeded in that, and it's a franchise that perhaps is not as strong as Mario today, but still a very strong franchise, and games are still released every couple of years, so that's why that's on this list. And the next game I'm going to introduce is definitely one that's... yeah, this game, Wolfenstein 3D, this is on here because of its technical achievements. It was developed by ID Software, designed by John Romero, and it's supposed to be the first true 3D first-person shooter, and you get to kill Hitler, so that's one awesome thing in it as well. And the graphics are fantastic for the time. The critical success, there was commercial success, and I think the games of the next couple of years really built on this and perfected this, but this is probably the daddy of first-person shooters, but the sound really does suck, listen to it. And there's no different lighting, so the atmosphere is not quite there. But listen to this one, this is the game. One of the best games ever. And I love the Steam music. It's so evil and awesome. So, Doom was developed by ID Software and again designed by John Romero, just like Wolfenstein 3D was, and this was released 1 year later, but the game was... I think it perfected that, what Wolfenstein was trying to achieve. Already you can see it just looks so much better because you have different use of lighting and levels, we go higher and we go lower. And for this release, this is not the actual 1992 PC release, this is the 95 PlayStation 1 release. I've chosen this for a very good reason. It sounds, the PC version had techno music and it took away from the atmosphere a lot, and I think the PS1 was important purely because, well not purely, it was important for lots of reasons, but because you used a CD which had 700 megabytes on, which was the size of what computer hard drives in the 90s, it allowed really high quality sound to be incorporated, and just listen to the ambience, and I think it's still really good to this day. It's one of the best ambiences ever in a game. I've got to say, this is probably the first game on this list that I've truly had a lot of experience playing, because this came along in my era of playing games. Although I think I played it too young. I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I bought a copy from my uncle and played it on my PlayStation 1. I was supposed to be 5 because I got my PS1 when I was 5. And my mum came up to my bedroom one night, found me playing it, and she freaked out because this game was rated like 15 or 18 as a UK release, and I was going, oh no, you should be playing this, it's scary, and that scared me more than the actual game. And from that fact of telling me it was scary when I was so young and I should be playing it, it's actually what makes this game still scary to play, because this game scares the shit out of me, and I know it might look bad to you now, and I don't understand why it scares me, but I think it's just my mum's put something in my head when I was dead young, and made this game forever scary for me to play. So thanks, Mum, for that. I can't get past level 3 in this game without shitting myself. Never mind, I still love it, and it's most probably the best first-person shooter ever released, the most significant anyway. Right, who can not love this game? This is one of the very first games. Actually, this is the... When I got my PS1 in the 90s... There's a sound disappeared from this game. I've got any sound in my headphones for this, so sorry if the audio is missing. There it is. Okay, this is one of the very first PS1 games I ever had. It came with my PS1, and I think every kid in the 90s has some experience of Crash Bandicoot. Sega had Sonic, Nintendo had Mario, while Sony had Crash, and I think, to me, this is more important than Mario and Crash. It's like Mario and Sonic. I spent so many hours playing this. Even as a family, my mum loved it, my granddad loved it, and even to this day, I think you ask any kid and they will remember Crash Bandicoot, at least any 90s kid, and I still play this game to this day. It plays so well, and the graphics don't have to feel outdated. It suits its design really, really well. And one of my fondest memories about playing games has definitely got to be Crash Bandicoot, and it looks so well, it plays fantastic, the physics were great. It was a real good challenge, and Crash Bandicoot 2 also, that was a really good game as well, and 3 as well. For the same year, 1996, we've got Quake. It's actually a game that I've never played, but I wanted to show it because it's significant for being one of the most significant first-person shooters of all time, and already, just after a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, we see the difference between this and Doom, and even this seems so much more polished. And it set the way for those arena-style games as well, such as Unreal Tournament and everything else. And we can just see it in the 90s. I think the technical improvements in games just came faster and faster and got so much better. I mean, this game still looks fairly good today, I think. Okay, perhaps it's running on modern hardware and... Oh, okay. Ah, here's one, yeah. The first Nintendo 64 release we're showing. This is GoldenEye, 1997. I've never had a Nintendo 64 actually, so my experience in the 90s was PlayStation, but when talking about shooters, we have to, I think anyone's going to tell you that GoldenEye is one of the most significant and best shooters of all time. For the 90s, the graphics look really, really good. Definitely has an atmosphere, and the lighting looks good the way it's all designed. But unfortunately, I've never played this game, and that's just such a shame because it's one of those games I really wish I had a chance to enjoy, especially when it was during its popularity. Funny at this point, Doom's actually starting to look old only after about 4 or 5 years. Compared to what we had 10 years ago, I mean, between this and Mario, it's such a massive difference. I had to figure out that, compared between 91's Sonic and this. I love the way as well, like, just bullet holes appear on the doors and stuff. I actually want to play this. It does look really good, actually. Metal Gear Solid is one of those games that makes me keep coming back to the PlayStation. It's still one of the reasons my PlayStation 1's connected to my TV. I think it was just such a fantastic game. The whole storytelling and the movie-like feel and the music and the voice acting, it was just all a really good package all put together. And the whole stealth genre came from this, and this did it so well. And it was one of those games that rewarded you more for sneaking around and wasting your time rather than just charging head first and shooting them all up. I know some people might not like Metal Gear Solid because of how lengthy it can be. The cutscenes can go on for 10-15 minutes sometimes. But it's one of those games you have to go into and not expect it to be quick. You have to go and expect to listen to the story and taking everything in. And that's very well loved. It just seems like you are actually playing a movie rather than just a whole story rather than just a game.
Stay alert. It'll be through here. I know it. I'm going to swat down a couple of bothersome flies.
I loved all the directing as well. If you look at games from a few years ago, there was no cutscenes, and games from a couple of years before this, the cutscenes are very simple, and this just took it to a whole new level. And had some weird brand of humour as well. I mean, just stuff like hiding in the cardboard box is quite funny. And every release on every console, the PlayStation 1 version, the PS2s, the PS3s, and come on the PS4, they've always been the absolute best the console can give, and the game's just always been a technical masterpiece, I think.
Snake, I unlocked the cargo door for you.
Thanks. Where are you?
Where I can see ya.
Gran Turismo is the best-selling PlayStation game on the PS1 ever. It sold 10.85 million copies, and it's one of my absolute favourite games of all time. I've loved cars for as long as I can remember, and when Gran Turismo came out, it was just amazing. There were 140 cars, 11 tracks, and the realism and the choice and variety, the graphics, everything was just so realistic at the time, and everyone was blown away by how the game looked. Looking back now, obviously it looks rubbish, but during the time in 1998, there was nothing else like it, and Gran Turismo proved that racing simulators on the consoles were feasible. Everything up to this point on the console had been either bad simulators or arcade games, with PCs dominating the simulating scene. And Gran Turismo changed all this. And it's one of those games you really want to just get in a car and get up and just race all day. Actually, this game took 5 years to develop. Even at times, there's only something like 7 people at certain times working on the game, and the amount of time and effort that went into this in the end was just staggering. And you gotta love this theme tune off the Japanese one, Moon Over the Castle. It's actually been used as theme tune on every single Japanese release of the game up until present day, I think. Unreal Tournament is one of those shooters that it's always compared to Quake. It's always Quake or Unreal, and for good reason they are very similar, but Unreal is just so hyped up and like on steroids, and it's just mad, the game that's so fast paced. And this was released in 1999, and even 16 years on, it doesn't actually look bad. It still plays really, really well. The AI is good, it challenges you. And the thing I always loved about Unreal Tournaments was that the online mode and playing against AI always felt the same. It didn't feel any different, and that's a compliment to the game because it's just so over the top and hyper, and I don't really think there's anything else like this. The whole atmosphere, the maps, and even the techno music going on in the background is really good, and I also love the announcer's voice in this. It's just kind of like godlike. Let's take a trip back again to the Gran Turismo franchise, and this time we have Gran Turismo 3, and this marks the first release of the next generation of consoles, and this is the PS2 version. Actually, it was only released on the PS2, but the Xbox came along as well around the same time. And the updates between the two generations of consoles are just staggering. I mean, if you look at how different the games look from this console jump, the cars still look really, really good, even though this game is 14 years old. And still plays really well. I think this one, it toned down the amount of cars from Gran Turismo 2. I think GT2 had something like 650 cars, and this brought it down to about 180. But obviously they're all updated and they all look much better, and the amount of work that went into it was quite tremendous. GT4 came along I think about 3 years later and had like 700 cars. It was like GT3 but just better in every single aspect, and GT4 is one of the very best games on the PS2. Ah yes, I had to include Halo in here somewhere, didn't I? So here's the first Xbox game we featured on our list. And Halo is widely considered to be one of the best video games of all time. And it's set in the 26th century, and your players accompanied by this computer called Cortana and everything. But speaking of Cortana, why don't you check out my Windows 10 review on the channel and look at how useless the 21st version century Cortana is, and then compare them, so things might be a little bit better than the 26th century anyway. But this was one of the killer apps for the Xbox anyway. It's one of those things that tried to draw people away from the PlayStation 2, and I think for a lot of people they were actually successful in doing it. Although the Xbox sales were nothing like the PlayStation 2's, definitely was a solid start for the console. And I seem to remember at the time people saying that Halo was too powerful for the PS2 to run, so I don't know whether it's just some marketing hype, because some PS2 games look better than Halo anyway, but either way, it's still an impressive game for 2001 and looks pretty good. However, I would say that the next game on the list, which is a PS2 release, does look better than Halo. Although I'm sure someone's going to disagree with me, so leave your comments in the section below and tell me why you disagree with me and why I'm a dickhead. So the same year also seen the release of Metal Gear Solid 2, and once again we return to the franchise. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I think the best way to discover how games developed over the previous generations and years is by going back to the same franchise a few times, at least in modern games anyway. So Metal Gear Solid brought a lot of new things to the table. I mean, apart from its updated graphics, which I think for the year and the console it was released on look absolutely fantastic. There's also new gameplay elements, but it was just... it played so well when you played it, and it's still an amazing game to play, and there's HD remasters for the PS3 and everything. And this, along with Snake Eater, two of my favourite action games for the PS2. The only downside I think is you don't really get to play Solid Snake that much. Instead you end up playing as that Ladyboy Raiden for half of the game anyway, if not more than half. But never mind, I didn't mind this character that much, it could have been worse. But to me, this was everything Metal Gear Solid 1 was, and a lot more. The action was more refined, the graphics were a lot better, so the sounds, the music. And even the humour, it's just funny the way he could hold people up and mug them and get the dog tags and everything. Interestingly, I think you can actually go the entire game without killing one single person. You can just knock them out and tranquilise them and stun them. And I think there's rewards or something for that against the end by doing that. So it was a really great concept the way it tried to entice you and encourage you not to actually kill people, but instead to do it stealthily. There were a few games I wanted to talk about before we got to this one, but in retrospect, when you look to them, the technical achievements just paled in comparison. So, let's skip forward 6 years from Metal Gear Solid 2 all the way to Crysis in 2007. And this game really did raise the bar. I mean, I want to talk about stuff like Grand Theft Auto and Unreal Tournament 2004 and even Gran Turismo 4, but nothing looks any good in retrospect after looking at what Crysis achieved. And this game is famous for killing almost any PC out at the time for one of our maximum settings, and even for a good couple of years afterwards. The detail in this was just staggering, and still is. It looks absolutely fantastic even today, and it still looks like a current generation game, I think. I mean, if you compare the comparisons between this game to what to come up with the next few years, I don't think they visually look that much more impressive. But I personally feel like we've got to a point with games where the advancements aren't as much as they used to be. What I mean by that is just if you look at the gap between the generations between like the Mega Drive to the PlayStation 1 and then the PlayStation 1 to the 2, the differences are huge, and I just don't see that same jump from the PS2 to the PS3 and then PS3 to the PS4. It seems to be going down a little bit, and they don't visually look as much gaps in between. I'm sure that technically and the amount of processing power there is needed between each generation of games is most probably increasing, but it just to the naked eye doesn't feel like it's that much difference if you kind of go on me. And I'm sure someone's going to disagree with me on that. I mean, I've seen the likes of Crysis, which is now 80 years old, still looking as good as a lot of games that are coming out in 2015. And granted, there are games that do look better than Crysis, so I'm not trying to say that Crysis is the best looking game still. But the fact is that if you took an 80-year-old game, if you took 80 years away from Crysis, go back to 1999, you've got the likes of Metal Gear Solid 1 comparing it to Crysis, and just that difference is just not there anymore. So I feel like games have got a lot more staying power, and that's a good thing really, because they're getting more eye candy and more photorealistic. They are standing the test of time a lot better. And Crysis is a great gameplay as well. The AI is fantastic, and the whole nanosuits functionality. And to be honest, I think Crysis 2 was a bit of a letdown compared to this. This first one really felt like freedom and looks better and play better. The physics are better. I just prefer the game far more than Crysis 2. Grand Theft Auto 5 has to be one of the best games ever made. It's just so complete. It's everything you could possibly do in the real world. You can do in Grand Theft Auto, and it looks beautiful while it's doing it. Sandbox games generally don't look as good as like the first-person shooter counterparts, but GTA 5 really impresses on this front. And impresses on all fronts: the whole shooter mechanics, the driving, the graphics, the physics. All of it just seemed outstanding, and it's one of those games that's going to get better and better with age. We've got the 4K 60 frames per second on PC now. We're going to have the mods coming over for the next few years. I mean, compared to like where GTA 4 stands now compared to when it was released on the PC. Mods like the Ice Enhancer, new vehicles, and the game has just been transformed. So imagine what GTA 5 is going to be like in 5 years. And I know this is one of those games I'm going to be playing in 10 years' time because it's just so complete. I mean, I still play the old GTA's Vice City and San Andreas because they offer so much gameplay, and GTA 5 just puts this and every other game to shame, I feel. I think this is the best game ever made. But it's not the best looking. Despite looking beautiful, I have to give this to Project Cars. This really does raise the bar up another level. We're so close to that photorealistic look. The lighting, how high polygon the models are, the attention to detail is just outstanding. And I think in a few years we are actually going to reach proper photorealism in terms of we won't be able to tell the difference between rendered and what we're seeing in real life sometimes. I compared to 2 decades ago, and I think if you'd shown this game to someone a couple of decades ago, they would have thought at the very least it was a pre-rendered CGI scene for a movie or something else. I mean, this is better than 90s CGI, no doubt. And this runs in 60 frames per second on 4K resolutions. Of course, if you've got the hardware, but in a couple of years, this hardware is going to be available to everyone almost, and everyone can play games like this properly. And it's just, where do we go from here? there's not that much more I think we can do in terms of improving these graphics, because they look so realistic at the moment, and we're not going to see the type of like improvements, I don't think, in the next 10 years we've seen in the previous 10, just because we're that close at the moment. But I think this final 10 is just going to be narrowing that gap between like what we see now, which almost perfect photorealism, and narrowing the gap to perfect photorealism, really.
So thanks for watching, guys, and I'm sure there's some videos on that list that really should have been in there that I've missed off, so please leave them in the comment section below what you think should have been included, and please tell me why, because I might make a second video in the future with other significant games. But thank you for watching. Please leave a comment in the section below, like this video if you liked it, dislike if you don't, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of the videos. I'm sure there'll be more to come in the future. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you again very, very soon.